Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Iowa started a disappointing 0-2 in 2020, but won their final 6 games by an average of 21.8 points per game. They're now looking to continue that winning streak as they carry tons of momentum into 2021. So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, ready to predict Iowa's schedule and record for this upcoming college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and also make sure to check out everything down in that description below, including our brand new expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country. So make sure to go give that a look over on thegridironexpert.com. I promise it's a deal that you do not want to miss out on. So we take a look at Kirk Ferentz and Iowa, guys. A team that consistently is usually 7-5, 8-4, sometimes breaks through, has that 9-10 win season, but usually middle of the pack in the Big Ten, except for a few special years here and there. But there's a reason to believe that this team could be different. There's reason to believe this team can be different. Won 6 straight games to conclude 2020, tons of momentum into 2021, tons of talent coming back, and a relatively favorable schedule that sees a lot of their big games at home at Kinnick Stadium, such as Indiana, Penn State, and Minnesota. When you look at the offense for the Hawkeyes, they have 5 starters back. An offense that was second in the Big Ten last year, averaging 31.8 points per game. The problem is they were 11th in the Big Ten with just 197.6 passing yards per game. So the offense was clicking. They were able to put up the points, but the passing game has to improve. And that, of course, starts with their quarterback and Spencer Petras, who threw for over 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. The guys who show promise in 2020, but a guy that needs to work on his accuracy. Guy who has to be better throwing the football. And the problem is, Iowa loses their top 2 receivers. Petras loses his top 2 receivers, and Amir Smith-Marset and Brandon Smith, which means their running back Tyler Goodson is going to pick up the load. He's going to be the workhorse for this Hawkeyes offense. And Goodson had a heck of a year in 2020. 762 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. And that's going to be Iowa's strength. Typically, that is Iowa's strength. Very similar to Wisconsin in the sense they always have a very good offensive line. You have a good defensive line too. And they like to bully you up front. Iowa can do that with Goodson. They can do that with one of the best centers in the country, and Tyler Linderbaum, arguably the best center in the country. And I do believe that their tight end, Sam Laporta, will not only play a major role in the run blocking, but will become Petras' number 1 target. When you look at the defense, guys, 7 starters back for Iowa, a team that always has a very strong defense. They were 6th in the country last year in scoring defense. Not 6th in the Big Ten, 6th in the country, allowing just 16 points per game. They were 10th in the country in rushing defense, allowing 107.6 rushing yards per game. And 8th in the country in total defense, allowing just 313.8 total yards per game. The defensive line is the major area of concern after losing Davion Nixon and Chauncey Golston, but I believe their linebacking core and secondary are going to be one of the best in the entire conference, of course led by Matt Hankins in that secondary. So this is a very strong Iowa defense yet again. What else would you expect under Kirk Ferentz? A defense that will have to carry the load early on as the offense begins to figure itself out. We take a look at their schedule. They start off against Indiana, and we already predicted Indiana's record. We've already predicted their schedule, and we talked about why this game is so big, that this is a top potential 15 matchup to start 2021. One that has Big Ten implications. Indiana trying to win the East, and Iowa certainly trying to win the West. Iowa very lucky, I would say, to host this game at Kinnick Stadium. First full game in over a year where we can have a sold-out crowd at Kinnick Stadium, one of the most difficult places to play. And when I look at this game, guys, Indiana's going to be a force to be reckoned with. 17 returning starters. You've got Michael Penix. You've got Ty Freifogel. They've got a solid tight end and Peyton Hendershot. This is a passing attack that can absolutely challenge Iowa's back seven, which is their strength, but still challenge them. The problem is Indiana can't run the ball. The Hoosiers average just 108.6 rushing yards per game, 114th nationally. We just mentioned that Iowa has one of the best, or did have one of the best rushing defenses in the country last year. I think Indiana's offense becomes one-dimensional in this game. They can't get anything going, at least that much, on the road. Iowa, maybe in a mini upset, defeats Indiana in week one. The Hawkeyes are 1-0. They then travel to Ames to take on Iowa State. Big-time rivalry game between the Cyclones and the Hawkeyes. But Iowa has won 5 straight games over Iowa State. That includes an 18-17 victory all the way back in 2019. A gut-wrenching loss for you Cyclones fans out there. But Iowa State, they're the real deal this year. Iowa State is the real deal in 2021. They have 2 Heisman Trophy contenders on their roster, and their quarterback in Brock Purdy and their running back in Breece Hall. They have 19 total starters back, including 9 on defense that ranked 8th nationally versus the run, 103.1 rushing yards per game allowed by Iowa State. Matt Campbell is one of the best coaches in the country. He has done one of the best jobs in the country building up this Iowa State program in Ames, where I believe the Cyclones defense really gets dominant in the backfield and shuts down Tyler Goodson, forcing Petras to win this game through the air with a relatively brand new wide receiver core. I don't like Iowa's chances here despite their recent success against their in-state rival. We're picking the Cyclones, a team that's not only a Big 12 title threat, but absolutely a college football playoff contender. And this game, I should add, might be a top 10 matchup in week 2, so watch out for it. It's going to be a classic. Iowa's at 1-1 now. We think they beat Kent State. We think they beat Colorado State. Neither of those should cause too much worry for you Hawkeye fans out there, although Kent State's offense is one to watch out for. But we believe they win both, and they are now 3-1 going into the bulk of Big Ten Conference play, and it starts on a Friday night at Maryland. And I don't really know what to expect from Maryland in 2021. You look at Maryland, guys, the talent is there where you think this team should win. It should be in bowl games with Mike Locksley. 6, maybe 7, possibly even 8 wins. The talent's there for that, especially on offense with Talia Tagovailoa and all of his pass catchers returning. But the weak link on Maryland's team is their defense. And I don't think their defense is quite up to par yet. A defense that allowed 230 rushing yards per game last year. I expect Tyler Goodson to have a pretty big day at Maryland. I believe Iowa's defense is good enough to shut down Tagovailoa and this passing attack, which is obviously what Mike Locksley wants to do. So even though it's on the road on Friday night off a short week, however you want to phrase it, I think Iowa, maybe in a game that's a little bit closer than something, goes on the road and beats the Terrapins, a team that, again, I just think has the talent, but is still relatively young and just isn't quite there to living up to their expectations. So Iowa goes on the road and defeats the Terrapins. They then return home and take on Penn State. That was one of those big home games that we mentioned. You know, you look at their schedule. Obviously, Wisconsin on the road is difficult. Iowa State on the road is difficult. Northwestern and Nebraska on the road could be difficult. But Indiana, Penn State, and Minnesota are all just as big, all just as difficult, and they get to come to Kinnick Stadium. That's very beneficial for the Hawkeyes. And you look at Penn State. Iowa beat the Nittany Lions by 20 points last year. Beat them 41-21 in Happy Valley. Iowa actually ended a 6-game losing streak to Penn State last year. They come so close to beating the Nittany Lions, could never get it done, finally did it last year. And you could all say, oh, well, that's because Penn State was bad last year. They were 0-5 and then won their Final Four to finish 4-5. You could say that, but I look at the way Penn State finished and said the talent was there. It just took them a while to finally wake up. The talent is once again there for Penn State now. They return 14 starters. They've got a great offense with Clifford and Kane and Dotson. You've got a solid defense now that was one of the best in the Big Ten last year. But the problem is Penn State is coming to Kinnick Stadium. And we all know how difficult of a place that is. If you don't like it when I talk about home field advantage, if you disagree with it, you can't deny it when you look at Iowa. Because Kinnick Stadium really is where dreams come to die. The last 2 meetings in Iowa City between Penn State and Iowa have been decided by a combined 7 points. 2 games, 1 touchdown has separated Iowa and Penn State. Penn State, of course, winning both of those. I expect this game to be very close again because we obviously know how you feel about Iowa. We feel about Iowa. You know how we feel about Penn State, having already predicted them and knowing they're going to bounce back with James Franklin. But I believe with home field advantage on their side and Iowa's defense being the difference maker here, trying to force Sean Clifford to win the game through the air, who at times can be inconsistent, we're going to go with the Hawkeyes to take down the Nittany Lions in an early October matchup. We then think they take on Purdue and beat Purdue. And I know a lot of people could say, why are you giving them such a quick and easy victory? They lost to Purdue last year, 24-20. It's a bit of a shock. In West Lafayette, Iowa lost to Purdue 24-20. Obviously, home field advantage plays a huge role. Revenge plays a huge role. And across the board, Iowa, from start to finish, is better than Purdue. The only way, or the only area where I think Iowa is at a disadvantage is at wide receiver. Obviously, Purdue with David Bell. He's going to be their big-time playmaker. But Purdue's rushing attack was practically non-existent last year. They're not going to be able to run against Iowa, which means that Jack Plummer or Aiden O'Connell is going to have to lead Purdue to a victory on the road, and I just don't see that happening. I also don't see Purdue's defense being able to hold up after allowing over 29 points per game in 2020. So Iowa gets yet another win. After the loss to Iowa State, they have now won 5 straight games, going into a big bye week before the road game at Wisconsin. That is huge. Arguably the biggest game on Iowa's schedule, the one that could determine the Big Ten West, and the Hawkeyes get a bye week before that game. How fortunate. And you look at what happened last year. Iowa beat Wisconsin 28-7. 28-7 in Iowa City, and just embarrassed their rival in the Badgers. But we know Wisconsin is going to be a very different team from what we saw in 2020. We know Wisconsin battled COVID last year and pretty much derailed their season. If they don't get hit with COVID, I don't think Wisconsin finishes at 4-3. I think they finish a lot better than that. The game is at Camp Randall Stadium in Madison. Wisconsin certainly is out for revenge, out to prove that last year was a fluke. Losing by 21 points, unacceptable. They return Graham Mertz, who, if like Spencer Petras, can make better decisions with the football and improve on his accuracy a little bit, can be one of the better quarterbacks within the Big Ten. A lot of his pass catchers return too. But while we know that Wisconsin needs improvement offensively, and while I do think they're going to get it, we know their strength is defense. We know their strength has always been defense and bullying teams in the trenches. That's Paul Chryst' style. Well, Wisconsin returns 8 starters on defense, 5th in the country last year in their rushing defense. They were 5th in the country in total defense last year. At home, with the division possibly on the line, we are picking the Badgers, and I don't see how we can't pick Wisconsin in this game. I think this team can be that good, guys, not just as the Big Ten West favorite, but a playoff dark horse as well because their schedule is just that favorable. In a low-scoring matchup, we like Wisconsin. Iowa then travels to Northwestern, so back-to-back road games against potentially the West favorite this year and then the team that won the West last year. So that's obviously not ideal. You talk about a difficult 2-game stretch there. It's that one. And yet you always hate to play back-to-back road games, period, let alone against 2 of the better teams in your division. We have losing to Wisconsin. They traveled to Northwestern. They fell to the Wildcats 23-20 last year. So again, that was part of that 0-2 start that we talked about. Northwestern, yes, won the West, but a lot of the people that contributed to that team, a lot of people that contributed to that West crown are gone. Peyton Ramsey is gone. Big-time wide receivers are gone. Blake Gallagher, Patty Fisher, the leaders of the defense are gone. Only 7 starters back for Northwestern, and now they're dealing with a brand new quarterback as well, and Ryan Helinski, the transfer from South Carolina. While I do think Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald are going to have a very solid defense, while at home in a potential top 25 matchup, I think they're going to be ready to play Iowa. I don't think Northwestern has the offensive capability to put up points on this Iowa defense. If the Hawkeyes are not hung over after Wisconsin, and that's going to be the key, do not be down on yourself after the Wisconsin game, they will beat Northwestern. We're going to pick them to beat the Wildcats, but like last year, I can see it being relatively close when maybe it shouldn't be. So they get the huge win at Northwestern. They come back home, back-to-back home games now, defeat Minnesota. We do think they defeat Minnesota. They beat them 35-7 on the road last year, and while Minnesota's going to be better, do I think there's going to be a 28-point swing from now or from 2020 to now? No, especially not when I think Iowa gets better and at Kinnick Stadium. They beat Minnesota. They absolutely annihilate Illinois, defeating the Fighting Illini 35-21 last year. Expect a similar result this year, maybe even worse, as Illinois is dealing with a bunch of brand new changes, namely a brand new head coach in Brett Bielema. And they round out their season on a Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, at Nebraska, their rival. A team they've defeated 6 straight times, with 4 of those 6 games being decided by 1 possession. So you can expect, I think, another close game in Lincoln because with Nebraska, they could be fighting for their postseason lives at this point. Maybe they've already clinched bowl eligibility, but they could have 5 wins coming into this game, which means their season lies at the hands of Iowa, lies in their final game of the year against the Hawkeyes. And we've seen poor Nebraska teams give Iowa a fight because, as we always say, in rivalry week, you throw records out the window, nothing matters, people wake up to play their rivals. Nebraska will do that on November 26th. But at the end of the day, they're not going to have enough to defeat the Hawkeyes. You look at Nebraska, 9 starters back on defense. Could be a relatively low-scoring game. Iowa defeated the Cornhuskers 26-20 last year. I'd say that's relatively low scoring. But Nebraska's offense is what worries me. Only 3 starters back, really aren't going to have much of a passing attack, going to have to do much of their damage on the ground, and we know how solid Iowa's rushing defense is. I don't think the Cornhuskers have enough. Iowa wins their 7th straight against Nebraska. And we have the Hawkeyes going 10-2. 10-2 in 2021. Might be a shock to many, but it's one of those seasons that we talked about. Usually a 7-8 win team. Every now and then they have that breakout year. We expect this year to be the breakout year. Favorable schedule, tons of talent, great head coach in Kirk Ferentz. Iowa 10-2 and potentially making a New Year's 6 bowl game in 2021. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and as always, check out everything in that description below, including our brand new expert picks. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss them. Sign up today over on thegridironexpert.com. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.